I am so curious as to how you're doing.
Well, things didn't necessarily go completely as planned.
Well, here's the thing, and I just wanted you to know, I so believe in you. This whole process is so painful. It is. And my job is to help guide you. And so if you can't see something, it's not that, of course you haven't been able to see it because you're still kind of suffering. So my goal is to be able to open up your mind so that you can see it. And so that's my challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's, of course, if you can't see it, you can't see it. So and that becomes a block. So we have to work to get through those blocks together. I do think that the decision for you to go back into dieting was the best decision.
Yeah. And I mean, you know how, like, for some reason, like, I've obviously dieted for the majority of my entire life.
Yeah. And you've done it all, right?
Friends,
there's nothing you haven't done, right?
Oh,
You've done it all, yeah.
Other than surgery, but I would have done that if the doctor would have let me.
Well, I know. Well, and the thing is, when someone comes to the HCG protocol and they're not anywhere close to needing it, that's a sign. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of radical, like surgery.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when someone who doesn't really have a weight problem does it, it's a sign that they are inflamed in the brain. Your brain is swollen. You know what I mean? And it's very specific to this thing. So, anyways.
Yeah.
So how has it been? So that was on Thursday?
Yeah, and so my normal, kind of cycle, like I was planning on starting, like, right away, or at least for
that was the goal. Day. Well, we had talked about, like, we went into that. Like, I was like, today. Why would you wait till tomorrow? I mean, you got to work on it today.
I know, and that's how, like, I've always been, is, like, I kind of have to, like, gear up my brain for it.
Yeah, well, and that's the case for all diets, especially if it's not, when you're dieting, there's no reason to implement the restriction unless you can do it perfectly. So if at that point during the day, you'd already, like, if you've already eaten something, because if you're going to go keto, if you've already had, like, cereal for breakfast, why would you try to do keto the rest of the day? That makes sense. It's kind of that all or nothing.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's why when I do this, I have everybody, when we go back into dieting, the goal is that you do it immediately. And some of that, because you're not doing it immediately, it opens your head to see, why can't I just do it now? I mean, if I wanted to lose weight today, why am I waiting?
Right.
If it feels
I've always thought that, like, okay, I want to be thin more than anything in the entire world. Like, and I would go to such great lengths to get there.
Yeah.
But so why, like, and my friend, she's like, yeah, like, you succeed in everything in your life. Like, you put your mind to something and you do it. It's the only area that I, like, have not been able to do that.
Well, you do. You do. It's just you can't sustain it. Right?
I'm not even really that good at even getting there. You know what I mean? I mean, I've never ever gotten to where, like, I've wanted. I've never. I'm not. It takes me a while to get, like, totally committed to it. I'm not. So I'm not the greatest dieter. I mean, yes, I have been successful. But
you have. So you have done it. So it's not like you never do. But what you're finding, and again, let's open our minds and look at it together. You and me, we're going to look at this together. Let's talk about that. Well, we do know that dieting sucks for everybody. No one really enjoys it. And there's a good reason why. Why do you think we're not wired to enjoy dieting?
Well, because it's, anytime you're told you can't do something or,
Well, this goes directly against our survival mechanisms.
Right.
So that's really why. We're not wired to enjoy dieting. We're wired to recognize the security that, rationing food provides us if we were in famine, but we're not wired to not want to eat food, right? And especially when food's around and plenty, we're not wired to continue to live in famine when there's plenty. We're wired to feast before famine, right? And so it kind of goes against our nature.
But I mean, again, that is totally true.
Yeah, that's why.
I seem to think that, or I truly believe that, like, I don't know if it's different people's brains or, their neurotransmitters, the brain chemistry or hormones or what, but, like, I truly believe there are certain people that, like, don't really care to eat, like, donuts and, or I like all this stuff where even if I'm not restricting myself, like, I'm not in that survival mode, I would choose that crap.
Yeah. Well, see, so I understand that. So what you're doing right now is you're taking your past history, which you've always been on some form of belief system around restricting. And so that is the outcome. So what they found with research, so that's an assumption you just made coming from what you've experienced while you've been perpetually living in food shame. Okay. Mm-hmm. What they have found in research. Okay. The good news is I read a lot of this stuff. Okay. So I'm helping you right now not have to read for a month straight of science around food behavior. Okay. So what they have found is that when people impulsively are drawn to those foods, those are the foods that they believe they shouldn't be eating, are threatening to them, and that they deprive. It's in direct relation. So when you have an overemphasis on one thing, your likelihood is because you're trying to restrict it, which creates more drive and need for it. What they found with people who don't is they don't ever restrict. So, and they don't feel bad or feel they're doing something wrong while they eat it. And so what they found is that the belief systems about the food directly impact the neurotransmitters. That it's not the food itself, it's their beliefs that they carry about the food that results in that type of sensitivity to food.
So it's like the brain remembers.
Well, yeah, it's almost like, well, we're going to be in famine. We need to prioritize that food. It's how our brains work.
Yeah.
And so you could look at the response. The other thing I want you to really look at is, what do you think happens when you deprive a certain palate or taste that you've had before, that the brain says, well, this is safe, but you deprive it? What happens to the narcotic response to that food when you finally eat it?
Oh, it's much greater.
Correct. So do you see how that's an outcome, not a cause of restriction?
Right.
So when you take someone and you restrict a certain food for a long period of time, they're more likely to have a more magnified reaction to it, sensitivity to it. That makes sense.
And then your brain remembers that.
Totally. So you get my point.
It more because you want that feeling.
Well, no, and they've actually proven that wrong, that we're not like rats. We're actually much higher in intelligence. You'd have to be retarded for that to even equate. Like, you literally can't have a frontal cortex for that science to translate. So it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
Just so that you know. They don't talk about that because that's such a huge moneymaker in fear-mongering people, is to treat you like you have no frontal cortex and you're just like a rat. Right? Which is hilarious, but what they found is your environment. Humans are very receptive to their environment, which we have to be, right? Survival mode is very much triggered by how we interpret our environment, if we're safe and if we can handle it, right? So not only is the environment, is it safe, but can we handle it? So I want you to imagine that you have food around you that you believe is poisonous, but yet you've had it before and it tastes good. Okay, and so the illusion of poison is just an illusion. Someone told you that. But yet it's delicious and everybody else is eating it around you. But you're like, it's a landmine of all these foods, but everybody else is eating it, safe for them. But it's dangerous. It's called, you're getting confusion between reality and fiction. Because reality around you is it's not. But yet you're told one thing. It's just amazing how this works. So we could just watch your observation, or excuse me, we're observing you, and you fit the profile 100%. You fit the profile. This person is in pretty radical survival mode around food in relation to her weight. So the problem too is that because it is kind of goes against our primal wiring, we're talking millions of years of evolution here. It's very difficult to sustain unless you are in total isolation. Unless you are creating actual famine around you. That makes it easy. So you would have to eliminate yourself from all social engagement for it to not create that agitation. So if we were to describe what's it feel like as a human being to be surrounded by food and the pleasures of food, and not only that, but the symbolism of family and connectivity, and then to be removed, like you are not allowed to participate. What does that feel like? To me, it's agitating. It's like an agitation.
Right. And, I mean, you could tell yourself, like, oh, I'm fine with it, and then, like, deep down, you probably aren't, and then...
Well, what's it feel like, really? What is it? There's a physicality to it. Like, what is the symptom of it? Like, go into that space. For me, I describe it as agitation. It feels like I'm irritability. There's an agitation. Like, it's a symptom. It's a physical feeling I get. Or I recall, like real agitation and fear. Sometimes fear around, oh my God, I can't control myself around this food. I have to leave. I can't look at it. Don't smell it. So you try to retreat from it, or agitation, like the physical symptoms that you're experiencing in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, at those times, like, it seems like I have pretty good self-control. When I don't have good self-control is when it's me alone with me.
Okay, so imagine
when I'm around other people, I'm totally fine.
So do you participate with the food with people? Is that something where you're just like, I don't necessarily hold myself to super strictness in public?
I mean,
Meaning you're participating, so you don't really feel the agitation.
No, I most of the time I'm not participating, because most of the time I'm on some sort of plan, and like everyone around me knows that, like, I always eat healthy, and so like,
okay, so I see.
If they were to see me eat a cookie or something, they'd be like, oh my God.
Got it. Okay, so your pride is you're getting some benefit out of pride. I'm just going to make sure I play that role, and there is a benefit to that. Okay, yeah. So when you get into, so go into what would it feel like if you were alone? The food is in your house, your kids have it and whatnot, and you're not eating it. Just go to there. Even if you've never experienced that, what would it feel like? Because Go ahead.
Then it would feel. I mean, like, there would be this tug. That's like the little devil and angel on each shoulder. Like in a tug of war. Like,
yeah. So if you didn't eat, don't you agree? There would be some degree of agitation. Yeah. Like the agitation of it would be It's like irritability. Like something is irritating. And there's also a weird. It should feel time. There's like time pressure around now, later, now. Like it's always now, it's like in your current now, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I usually, well, I guess it depends. I mean, a lot of the time I give in, like, in.
Yes, well, if you didn't give in, that's what we're describing. Because what'll happen, like when you're in that social environment, you have a coping mechanism in play to balance that out, right? Oh, I'm presenting the healthy me. I'm presenting the self-controlled person. So I have some benefit to it because I am presenting this holier, healthier, self-controlled individual, which I get benefits from. People promote me for whatever reason because of it. When you're alone, there's no promotion, so there's no counterbalance to it, right?
Yeah, see, I always guess I thought, like, I have no self-respect of myself and my body, I just abuse it. Like, why would I? Why would I do that?
Yeah, that's being really critical of yourself, not really understanding why, right? So like holding yourself to that expectation without really understanding how to hold. How do I keep myself to that level of control without really knowing how to do it because you clearly, it sounds like when you're in public, you have a good counterbalance to it. The ego is counterbalanced with it, right? You get alone and there is not an adequate counterbalance for you.
Right. Yes. Yes. And that's why I always used to eat in hiding, and I would hide stuff. Like, I mean, I don't do that.
I have a question. When you would get home, so let's imagine, so tell me this is something I see commonly for people who really keep their shit together in public. When you would get home after a party, is that when you would overeat? Oftentimes, you would like the pressure would release, and you would on your way home to stop in a drive-through and get ice cream or something on your way back, from the party. Okay, that means that you were holding agitation during.
Right.
You're just somehow coping, so it's not conscious.
Yeah, for sure. Like the next day or something, or I mean, I can think of specific times when
so all
I
of
have
that,
done that.
All of that. Obviously there's where you can't hold that agitation in anymore and you just relax around food. But keep in mind the agitation that builds up being deprived in those environments. Even if you have a good reason to deprive yourself, it's still your reasoning still doesn't equate to your evolutionary biology. You're evolved to want to feel adequate with food, safe with food, abundant with food, and that you can always get more. So you're kind of living in an environment that's triggering all of those in a negative way. You can't have more. None of it is safe. You really don't have enough. If you admit it. You know what I mean? So you're living in fight or flight with food. And what's amazing about that, because it is this primary need to survive, food is the number one, food, water, right? How it takes over your mind. Like you have to think about it all the time. And that's what they found with studying human behavior. Have I gone over Maslow's hierarchy of needs with you?
No, I studied it in school.
Okay, this is actually really going to fascinate you because you're living in what he describes. And they've done a lot. He was a genius. Maslow was a genius.
Yeah.
And he had to have experienced levels of this and obviously monitored people in it to come to this theory about it that is still relevant today. 50 plus years later, people are still like genius. They've added, more like sex they don't think is primary because we don't need it and people eliminate it all the time, So they put that much higher. So the lower, so I want you to visualize that pyramid. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Basically, he studied that he believed that human behavior and human psychology, we are wired to prioritize certain needs above others, right?
Yes.
And that we are wired to seek resolution and to seek relaxation and to seek, security with these basic fundamental, this hierarchy that we're wired to seek security for one thing above another. So the foundation, the most vital need for us to feel secure, what do you think it is?
Food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like number one, food and water is it. And we clearly don't have a water problem, so that you're not even triggering that. Because you have water. You're not obsessive compulsive about, I shouldn't drink that water. Can I drink that water? I'm curious to see if there's a water disorder out there.
Right.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it wouldn't be surprising that people are like, it has to be alkaline. I can't touch it.
There's probably people that drink too much water.
There is. It is actually toxic. Water is toxic under, So you got to wonder why they're drinking too much water. Are they depriving it? Were they deprived of water? Anyway, so food. And so they've looked at what is it? What is it with food? What are we seeking in security? And it wasn't just one thing. It's not just I have food. It's much deeper than that. It's can I get more? Like, do I have the ability to replenish is a very big, like, agitator. And so when it's secure, you know you can always get more. There's plenty behind. It's like having that, food storage, knowing that if something were to happen, I have enough to feed my family. So it's not just can I get more, it's do I have enough for those that I care about? So not just me, but my children. So it's much deeper and profound than am I secure with food? There's depth to this one. So it is broad. And then another thing is it safe to eat? I want you to think about evolution and millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years living in the wilderness. Why it would be really, really agitating to not feel safe with food?
Right.
I mean, we're talking life and death.
What could kill you.
Correct. So it benefits us to be concerned, is it safe? But it triggers survival mechanisms pretty harshly. You can imagine the degree of survival reaction to that one relative to, something like, do I have a hat when it's cold outside? Which one is going to be more triggering? The food one. They're still a priority, right? Because the hat and the cold would be that's that second hierarchy of need. It is a priority, but not as fundamentally as important as food. So you could probably look at those basic fundamental physiological needs, and when you are not secure, your reaction is more extremely inflammatory than the other layers that are above it. Right?
Like if I don't get enough sleep or,
Yeah, well, sleep would be fundamental. Right? Yeah, sleep is physiological. So when you look at sleep, if you don't get sleep, and I'm certain you've had time where you don't, it becomes you can't stop thinking about it and you get nervous about it. You get scared, I'm not going to sleep. You become full of anxiety about it. There's a reason why. That's a natural reaction to something that is so as vital as sleep. I use sleep as an example a lot.
Yeah.
Because it is primary. It's not as primary as food, however.
Right.
Because your brain will say you have to stay up all night if it means you got to eat your food. Because it'll prioritize food over sleep when it comes down to it. But either way, those are both primary. So that foundation of your psyche and your fight or flight reaction is food, and you have a more severe response to food. So do I, so did I, so does every client I'm working with. It's almost like, again, fight or flight, life and death situation. And that's how the brain responds to this type of food deprivation, famine, cyclical famine. And you've had enough cyclical famine that you're constantly living in preparation for it, right? And so how our brains respond is to drive your food consumption to that famine. So yeah, when you talk about some people's brains, of course, it's a sign they're in constant deprivation and they're working perfectly. When they do the studies, these people who are more sensitive to food are chronically depriving and think that what they're doing is bad. And so their food is unsafe. So they have these belief patterns that really kind of perpetuate the behavior with food that they're trying to control. So the controllingness of their food is actually driving the impulsiveness of their food consumption. Mm-hmm. So when you take a step out of it, you can see it and go, well, of course, this is like going back to that sleep example. When you imagine that we have this society that believes that when you're a superior human being, you don't need as much sleep. You can sleep less, work more. So there's very much pride around, I only need 3 hours of sleep and I get so much work done. And how much sleep do you need? Would you be so happy about saying 8?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So imagine, right? So imagine you start to try to deprive yourself. I'm going to get up. I'm only going to sleep 5 hours. And you are like, I'm going to do it. So you go to bed at midnight. You get up at 5 a.m. And you're like, I only need 5 hours of sleep. I feel so invigorated. Well, what's going to happen when the body says, no. You need to sleep. I'm just imagine people living in total sleep deprivation and then feeling like there must be something wrong with me. I really am tired today. I mean, I think I might have narcolepsy. I think I might have it. Seriously. never questioning the sleep deprivation as the cause, because it's been promoted narcissistically as a superior form of proving you're a superior human being, right? So this is where that third hierarchy of need. So the third tier up is our pack animal drive to feel secure in ourselves with our tribe. So our goal in that third hierarchy of need is to feel that we are lovable, that we have something to give to the tribe. We're pack animals. We want to have an intrinsic sense that I am valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I have something to give. I have something to give.
And accepted.
Well, no, that's not it. That's what we try to do when we don't feel that way. So getting accepted is actually when you do not feel within yourself that you are lovable, the way we compensate is through trying to be accepted.
Oh, okay.
So it's like coping. If I don't feel that I'm intrinsically valuable, I'm going to constantly need feedback. And I want people to want to like me. And I want people to like me. And so that's where you're having a problem. And a lot of people. And I did, right? And you could say it's probably natural as we evolve and mature that we have that sense of, if we don't have an internal sense of our own authentic gift to our tribe, that we are going to seek what is predictably acceptable from a superficial point of view.
Yeah, I don't even recall a time in my life that I wasn't like that. I mean, maybe kindergarten.
Well, that's where I was 4. I was like, when you're just good in yourself and you're good in your environment and you're just playing and you're like a child with this just innocent goodness that you don't even know it exists. You just exist in it. You don't even know what it is because you just exist in this childish essence of, I'm involved in the world is amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, but I remember, I remember feeling like that at a very, very young age and trying to please people, and then you just get like I specifically, I don't know if it was second grade, third grade, maybe. I mean, that's pretty young.
Six, 7.
I would, I would just thought I was being nice, and I would help. There was one specific boy that I would help him with his homework because he wasn't very good at it or whatever, and I would help him, and then I get up and go to the bathroom, and he tells her, "Oh, she's my Toby. She just does whatever I want her to do or whatever," and I mean that's how my whole life was.
I left it at 4. Since 4 years old up until I was about to commit suicide, it was all about pleasing everybody else. To get their friendship, to get their attention. Pay attention, please. I want to know someone knows I exist. I mean, it started for me at 4.
Yeah.
So there was very little recollection of anything other than don't be real, be what other people want.
Yeah, I remember trying to try to please your parents or anything.
Totally. I had a next door neighbor, and this was around that same time. And I remember so vividly, and it tells you something when I have such a vivid recollection of this moment. And this might have been the moment I left myself. We were having lunch together, and she was so pretty, and her mom would do her hair so pretty every day. And my hair was very, very difficult. My mom didn't know how to do it. And I always felt bad that my hair was ugly and hers was so beautiful. But one day, and she was kind of like, she was like, I was eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I loved peanut butter and jelly. It was like my favorite sandwich, and my mom would make it for me with so much love. And she made fun of me because she thought it was gross. What do you think happened the next time my mom made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
You didn't want it?
I didn't. Yeah. And my mom was like, what? I still remember this. I still remember, Robin, no, eat it. And I was like, mm-mm.
Yeah, no.
So I rejected my love and joy and my mother's love and joy of giving it to me because I thought there was something wrong with me because she had that opinion. So so that right there, you could look at this whole thing and go, and that's what this stems from. Obviously, it feels more complicated than something like a freaking peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is this thing that it is the survival mechanism. Again, it's not just because it's like the third level up, it doesn't mean that we don't get triggered by it, right? Like survival mode. If you look at our culture, wouldn't you agree? Food clearly isn't the problem. We're not in a third world environment.
No.
We have so much tribal pack animal survival mechanisms going on. It's all like,
I think I put that level, the third level, at like the first level, and then the food was my coping.
Well,
like,
so you're so getting it. You're so getting it with what you just said. You're starting to see, okay, well, what I've done is I've said, well, my third, I have to be thin to get that sense of I have something of worth. Again, the sense, I need to learn how to describe this, because this is going to be written in my Thin Supremacy book, this whole thing. The goal is that you feel secure, that it is complete. So I have enough food. It's a completion, right? There is a sense of, it's like a destination. Like I am complete. I have enough. I am secure. There is no threat. I don't need to focus on it. That's the goal, right? Don't you agree? When you think about your thinnerness, that is exactly the goal. If I'm thin, I don't have to worry about it. I could just relax. So that's how it works. The brain is seeking this destination as if it's a destination, right? Like when I feel lovable, then I will reach freedom. The problem is you are connecting it to something that is a external dependency for validation. So it's not coming from within. It's coming from without, which means you constantly have to manage it, keep it with life or death type of psychology. And so the problem here is that your desire to be thin for third tier levels will never win against a first foundational, deep-seated drive for food, ever. So you might be temporarily capable of being thinner for that and threatening your first hierarchy of need, but your likelihood of actually going against millions of years of evolution and winning is pretty much zero, unless you're in total and complete isolation. Again, it takes isolation to do it because of our primalness around getting food, feeling safe around it. So if I want you to think about what's happening is you're taking a third level need and you're trying to secure it with a goal that requires you live in famine, which is a first level trigger.
Yeah, well, see, and I can't really remember. I don't think at that age, I didn't restrict. At that age, I didn't think it was like necessarily a bad thing to.
No, but if you didn't feel bad about your weight at all, or did your parents feel bad? Was weight a big deal to them?
Probably my mom. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that type of hearing just other people be criticized of food can impact your safety with it, or the feeling that it might go away. There's a lot of different reasons why, you know.
I mean, I remember that when I was a little bit older. I don't think she had, ever said anything at that young of an age. But and I never felt like food was not gonna be like at that point, at that age. I don't really think I felt like that primal instinct was gonna
triggered,
be gone. I never felt like food. We always had plenty of money. It never felt like food was never gonna be there.
Yeah. I grew up in a pretty poor environment, and I felt that way a lot.
Yeah, see, I've never, ever gone hungry.
And if you don't eat fast, you're not going to get seconds. So the rapidness of the food consumption too. But you don't have to. You can just be raised by someone who shames you for not finishing your plate, or who only has certain foods for certain times. So it might not be shame induced other than, oh my God, we have cake? We rarely have cake. And then it becomes a really big deal. So there's so many intricacies that can go into it. Now, as an adult, that's not the case. Your issues are very specifically about fear of weight gain. It's very, very specific at this point.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's why the childhood stuff doesn't necessarily matter, because it's currently, this is the way it is.
Right, and I guess I can see different things that, like, evolved me to this. I mean, when I was, I still, like, I think as I didn't feel accepted, then I used the food just to, as a drug, like, and, I mean, obviously I did that through my whole life, but, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm eating to fulfill, like, I mean, this need to, because I'm hungry, no, never.
No, most of this is unconscious.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about it now, looking at it consciously from a different viewpoint to give you relativity. But when you're experiencing it, you're not thinking, oh, I'm trying to fulfill Maslow's first hierarchy of needs.
Right.
You're not thinking that. You're thinking, I really need to feel safe. I need to compensate here. There's something I need so that I feel safe. So you don't feel safe. You could say you haven't felt safe for a long time.
Yeah, or like I felt like almost like it was the same as someone, shooting up or something. Like I just.
Well, if you've studied people shooting up, they have the same environmental triggers. They're trying to get rid of their fight or flight symptoms. So yeah, for sure, that's what that is. It's not about the drug. It's about feeling safe. They're trying to medicate what they're not looking at what creates that agitation and the state of mind that promotes. So how many people go to rehab and they can literally say, I'm not addicted in the moment? They study this. I mean, I've been looking at a lot of the science around addiction. Once someone has been through recovery and they're no longer relying on the drug, they're actually not addicted in that moment. Mm-hmm. So what is it that drives them to relapse? Well, it's what is the actual problem. It's an environmental trigger that makes them feel unsafe. And they're trying to escape it. Yeah, so that is absolutely true. You are correct. You have the same environmental response.
So how do they ever learn to, like...
They have to change their belief systems going into, a lot... So they do know these people that are addicted, that have addictive, whatever you want to call it, that they are perfectionistic, that they have high standards, that they all tend to have narcissism, that they don't give themselves lenience. There's very little grace. So they're triggered much easier.
That's all me.
I know. I'm like, you're clearly, this is it. Yes, you are meeting everything. Yeah. I feel like I'm shooting up. You are. You're exactly the same. You just don't think that what you're shooting yourself up with is dieting and thinness. You're not seeing that. Your issue is not the food. Your behavior with food, to me, is in line with human survival mechanisms. It is not surprising to me. It is not weird at all. Your behavior with food is what you would expect. If you didn't respond this way to food, you would need to get major brain scans. Something's wrong. So that's not the issue. Your issue with food is to be expected for someone that truly believes in starvation is healthy. And that's another thing that they found is the more people diet, the more they restrict, the more chronically they do it, the more issues they have psychologically with obsessive compulsiveness. They are like animals with like really sketched out animals around food. And it's amazing because you could say, well, yeah, when I get around food by myself, that is how I am. And I shame myself. I don't know why I can't stop. What is my problem? Well, it's because you're not really looking at your consistent, chronic food deprivation is triggering this. Like, if you open your mind, you could go, well, of course I'm going to overeat. Of more. That to me is like, yeah, of course, that's primal. That's like, you're a normal human being. Good job. It's no different, That to me is like, that's not the problem. Of course, we could look at that as a symptom and go, well, okay, the symptom is she's she's compensating a lot with food. Like, clearly, she doesn't feel safe with food. Like, if we were to go backwards. Someone who is constantly obsessing or wanting or has this drive, you could say, well, that's a sign that their food is being triggered. Their survival is being triggered, meaning they're in famine. There's got to be impending famine. There's got to be implied or implemented famine for sure. The other thing they found is that when you look at human behavior in famine, that when people have to be around food but are enforced within restrictions, they tend to have binge eating symptoms after the fact. So let me explain the studies that they've done with this. So they've taken groups of people and had them on the same exact food restrictions. Same exact, right? And they changed the environments of the people with the food restrictions. Okay. So one of the things that they did is one group, this was their food restriction, but they were to do it for a spiritual reason. So they called it a fast. We're fasting. We're going to be looking at your brain. We're going to be looking at your behavior, but here is the food you're to be eating and here are the limits, but choose maybe a cause that you're doing this for. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Same exact restriction as these other groups. And so another group, they said, we're doing this to lose weight and you're to stay home. You're to take all the food out of your home and only have the food that is on this protocol or on this study in your house. And so if other people are eating, they're not to eat with you. You're to eat alone. You're to eat just these foods, and there's no other alternatives available. Okay. And then there was another group that they were like, here's this food protocol. Here are your restrictions. However, you're to eat in public. You're to eat when other people are. You're not to limit any of the food that comes into your home. So, but you're to stay true to this restriction while living with all this food around you and other people can do what they want. So you need to create this environment with a ton of shit going on around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those three were compared and they were looking at how the cravings they experienced, so actual cravings, how they felt about the deprivation and how they responded once the research was over, once the restrictions were over, how they responded with food. Mm-hmm. What they found is that the group that restricted, again, keep in mind these people all meet the same kind of standards, demographics. They did the same exact restrictions. Mm-hmm. The group that did it as a fast for spiritual reasons experienced very little, non-significant amount of cravings. They also didn't show any signs of overeating or binging eating after the fact.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Right? The group that was isolated from food and removed from seeing it and being around it and ate alone, they had cravings and they did overeat after the fact. They did see signs of overeating, not binge eating impulsivity. Yeah. But they did show signs of feeling deprived, wanting food, but they weren't really so bad that it was miserable or they couldn't do it. And then they did overeat after the fact.
Yeah.
So the group that restricted but was around a bunch of food showed signs of anger, resentment. Their cravings were pronounced significantly. So statistical significance in the degree that they rated their cravings, feelings of being deprived. And not only that, but once they were done, they showed signs of binge eating disorder impulsivity. Mm-hmm. That tells you a lot, right? About how our brains function and the brain chemicals and how it functions around being deprived, especially when other people are around, and what they when you look at it, you could see, well, it's a defense mechanism. It's almost like I'm being withheld. I have to defend myself. So it can come across as a threat rather than right? So if you're being withheld from food, that's threatening and it's being done to you. So why you would be more defensive about the food after the fact? Or if you have availability to it, why you would be like self-preserving.
Yeah, I mean, I could have guessed that.
Well, because you're living in that, right? And you can go, well, of course. Yeah. So imagine that the people that came off of that were told, oh, you're addicted. Oh my God, that food is addictive.
Yeah.
Do you see how short-sighted that is in terms of looking at it? You're basic. And who do you think had the most narcotic response to food when they got out?
The third group.
The bigger triggers. Yeah, the ones that were under more survival threat, which is food is being taken from you. Just imagine. And then, oh my God, you're addicted to food. That's why they're binging. So what they're trying to do is look at this and really understand our primal wiring, which is so much more relevant than just saying, oh, you are addicted to food. Do you see how it, again, short-sighted, single-minded, myopic, that whole concept is when you're not really opening up to, well, does this person restrict regularly?
Yeah.
And do they feel bad about themselves? How does shame about who they are impact? Which is where they really found a lot more problems, is when someone actually feels that they are terrible human beings because of it. Like they really think that they are a horrible human being, which then feeds back into pronunciating that survival around, am I lovable? Do I have something to give? So it feeds, they call it a trap, survival trap.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to fulfill a psychological drive and need that we are wired to want, to feel safe and to feel lovable and to feel that we are lovable, with something that absolutely, completely threatens your life with food, right? So when you have two survival needs that are conflicting with each other or that are waging war against each other, which one is the bigger priority will ultimately always win.
Right. I mean, that's
thousands of years of evolution.
Sense, yeah.
Thousands and thousands of years. It's not going to all of a sudden just change because for this glimpse of the last 80 years, believe in thin supremacy. It's not going to just all of a sudden go, oh, okay, let's change everything so that people's narcissism can be fed. It doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah. So
when you that conflict really does, so you can say, well, when I'm out in public, because I'm getting that, I am feeling lovable, I'm thin, and people are acknowledging that I'm so controlled, and how do I do that? There is that feed. It does support that primal kind of like, I need validation, I want validation, I need that. So in that moment, you could say it's tempered. But as soon as I don't have that, all of a sudden my actual animal needs start flaring up. Like there's and I don't know why I can't stop eating. Right?
Yeah. That it usually, always would happen. Yeah. Maybe not right away, but
at some point, your brain says it's time to go. And the other part about it too is how you cope with those moments where you are eating. You do cope. There's all sorts of conversation you have in your mind that allows it. Yeah, that's where we go into reasoning, rationalizing, justifying. Yeah, and that's because you feel bad about it. And so in order to not feel bad, to remove those neuropeptides in the brain, you've got to have a good excuse.
If someone could record what goes on in my brain, like what I say to myself,
I know.
Just be amazed.
Well, it is amazing because you demonized it so much, but it's actually, again, going to the fact that you're You're that third group. Just so that, you're the third group in that study. But you're not doing it for a study. You're doing it because you believe it's the right thing to do. It's not like you're doing this thinking that it's catastrophic or that it has consequences. You're not implementing diets believing they're bad for you.
Right. I mean, I know that it doesn't work. Logically, I know it doesn't work, but it doesn't stop me from doing it.
Or even if you say they don't work, they're actually a big part of why you overeat. But yet at the same time, you rely on them to get rid of the damages from overeating, not realizing that. So do you see where it's confusing? So you're not going into...
Exactly.
That's what I meant.
Exactly the circle that, because I'm to the... Right, and I'm at the point now, where I need to get back.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go any further. I can't because my clothes don't fit. I won't go anywhere. I will sit at home, literally.
Right. So this is why I said you should go back, because I think you need to go back into but do it with an open mind this time.
Yeah.
Really open your mind to be a witness of what's going on. And I think that's the best thing for you. I really do. I think this is probably going to be the most important, actually, a very important aspect of your, the end of it all.
Yeah.
Is not only, not just having someone explain it to you so you don't feel so fucking crazy.
Right.
Holy shit, this is actually primal. And it feels primal. But that you can witness the big picture, right? Because when you're in that space of I just can't, you're sucked in and can't see anything beyond the moment, right?
Right.
You're so myopic. You're in that survival mode. Those are all symptoms of survival mode. You go into tunnel vision. It feels like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
Like crisis.
So and there is no option.
Crisis mode. Yeah.
In not just crisis mode, it has to happen now. So it feels like your time. This is so cool. See, this is so cool to me because this is so human nature triggered, right?
And that's why,
so cool.
The worse it gets, the more my clothes, the more they are tight.
The more it's like
it's a panic. Oh my god,
totally.
It's a total panic.
Okay,
and then I'm like, okay, I have to do
something about it.
The fastest.
Totally. So we could look at that panic and go, well, what's happening is that third hierarchy of need is under threat, big time, and it is primal. It's not a not need. It's a third hierarchy of need. So it's in that priority of survival needs. So it would feel like life or death, right? I'm going to be rejected, abandoned, disapproved of. I'm going to be, I have nothing. I'm nobody. It's like a weird sense of if I don't do something, I'm going to be smushed into sand and blown into the universe of nothing.
Right. I can't go. I can't live. I can't live.
I'm going to die.
I have to totally withdraw from the world.
Correct. Because I'm going to die. Yeah. And
then that just makes you depressed and want to eat.
But that's you just described your cycle. You just described the cycle. That's what all you know. You've never done anything else but that.
Right.
So that's all you know. I'm just letting you know there is an infinite way of doing it differently. But that's all you've done. And so you could see too when you only do things one way that it can be radicalized very quickly because you have no alternative. You're only one way to escape. That's the escape. That one right there. Even though there's 50 bazillion other ways for you to manage this, you've only used one way. And so if you're afraid, it's like ordering off a menu from your favorite restaurant. It almost feels like risky to order something that, you love this one thing you order every time you go there.
Right.
If I order off that, it's not as good. It could ruin the whole experience. I mean, that is in essence similar to what you're experiencing, but what you're experiencing is 100 times worse.
Right.
Right. It's high risk. I cannot take a risk. I have to do what I've always done, even though I fucking hate it.
High,
Exactly. There's no lenience because you don't know any alternative. And so because there's no lenience on the outcome, you can't afford to do anything different. This is why it's to me as a witness and someone who's been here. Okay, it's amazing. It is. I mean, become a scientist for 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's freaking amazing how this survival mechanisms are so intense and powerful and forceful. It's more forceful, and you don't know what else to do. It's,
right.
Yeah, and you're kind of stuck in it, even though you know, I don't know how much longer I can do this, but I have to. I don't know an alternative, and I don't have the luxury of finding out.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. I get that. And it is. The more, and it gets worse. This is the hard part is that it gets really, really worse. So you become even more impulsive and you get less wiggle room, and it actually does get worse. Right. And you could see that that's what's happened. It's like, it's like, I don't know why I'm like, it's looping. That circle is looping faster. I don't have the grace period anymore. I don't have the grace time. I have to do something. And the time, the vulnerability and the sensitivity to weight gain for you is even more impulsive and dangerous, right? So you might have at some point been more lenient, but now you're not as lenient. It is far more strict,
Like when you're like if it's 5-10 pounds, people don't really notice. You don't really necessarily notice. Your clothes they still fit. Like
that's the key. If people don't notice, then I'm not triggered in that third hierarchy of need. If I can manage that, but as soon as they will notice, and I know they will notice, now all of a sudden there's a trigger that occurs, and it's intense. And that's where you were when we talked last. You were just out of your fucking mind, right?
Yeah,
and it is. You can't stop.
More so the clothes. Like, it's literally like, okay, I can stay home and wear loose, baggy clothes and have no one see me, but I have to go to work.
Yeah. So now that's your trigger.
Work clothes are cute. Yeah. Like, what the frick am I going to do?
Yeah.
Like, so that's total panic mode, and I'm like.
That is actually, again, witness that. Of course, if you are that strict in that environment, of course you're going to have these impulsive issues. Anybody would under the same feelings. I mean, you're not weird. Anybody who has that much strictness around that body image, how other people perceive you, would have the same impulsiveness to go diet under those conditions.
Right, because I won't bring myself to buy other clothes.
So that constricts everything even more. So that pressurizes things even more, right?
Yeah, I mean, because if I just went and bought new clothes, then
you would have lenience.
Then I have room now,
Yep, and that would give you grace and some lenience to figure it out. But if you don't have that lenience or grace, that impulsiveness comes back in, doesn't it? And it becomes really intense very quickly, and that's why it's like the impulsivity to a diet is so intense. Now, escape. It's like, because
yeah, exactly.
Oh, good. So just witness it and don't judge yourself. Don't criticize it. I think it's important for you to actually see the connection to, well, of course, anybody who feels that intensely, because how impulsive you are to run to a diet is really an indication of how intense you feel and how bad you feel about your weight.
Oh, right, yeah.
So, just connect those dots from a wider perspective. That way you're like, oh, okay, all these weird things we do and all this really weird, if you think about it, it's so understandable under this context. So to someone else, they don't get it, but they don't understand the intensity of my shame and fear about it. That's why I'm so obsessive around exercise. And of course I would be, because it's that horrible to me. to me.
Yeah.
And it goes beyond horror to, I feel like I'm going to die, which is why I'm living in survival mode around it. I mean, clearly I have these like sketchy survival impulses, shifty eyes, like hiding behind things. Oh my God, I'm going to die. It's that type of intensity. You're not relaxed about it. You're not like,
I know. I was thinking
comfortable
about
with yourself.
Literally the only time in my entire life, like in my entirety of my entire life, was that I felt like completely free.
Pregnancy.
From this whole,
Pregnancy?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
I know, because you gave yourself grace to be a regular person. You probably noticed
because it was like it's okay, it's accepted. You're doing it like the weight stigma is gone because people expect you to gain weight, and you're doing it for a reason.
No,
and you get a reward out.
What's amazing too is that most of the clients I work with, I mean, I've worked with a ton. That's why this is so predictable. What you were going to say?
Yeah.
I already knew before you said it. I'm like, oh, pregnancy. You probably didn't have your eating disorder either at that time because it was so relaxed and you didn't have to feel shame about eating certain things. It was as soon as that baby came out and you had to lose weight, you got intense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and then it comes back and they're like, it's something in the HCG. And I just start laughing. Oh, that's funny. No.
To where I even had, like after my second baby, I had plastic surgery. It was...
Yeah, it's understandable. Again, go into how intensely attached you are to thinnerness. So it's intense. It's abusive almost because you're not allowed to have a normal body. You have to fit in a very strict range and to a degree that it is survival for you. This is my survival.
Yeah. And I think part of it was like, okay, I paid tons of money, had that surgery, and so then it was even worse if I was to gain weight. Like I'm letting the doctor down. Like I know, and
like, you have
how could I gain this weight back? Because like I went through all that. I like bled and paramedics had to come to the house, take me to the hospital. Like I almost died.
So can you see how that would impact your relationship with food as a byproduct?
Mm-hmm.
How it really pressurizes that fear of food. Food becomes, if you think about that emotion around your weight and the pressure, how that projects onto food as a danger.
Right.
And what do you think that does to that primal mechanism?
It makes it stronger.
Really strong. Almost like, where is this fire coming from? Binge eating is going to go up. Plus the shame, I failed. You're probably going to have symptoms of bulimia. So I wouldn't be surprised at the time that might be when your exercise bulimia flared up or you actually made yourself puke.
Yeah, no, I never made myself puke.
Oh, that's right, but you wish you could have.
10th grade, like that little time. But, But I got, that's kind of when I started exercising.
Yeah, that's bulimia. It's the same thing. It's just a different way to purge. Right?
Yeah, right. Or dieting,
like a loop. Diets are a little bit bigger, bulimic purge. It takes the binge and the purge and spreads it out a little bit. As soon as you start actually puking or using exercise, it can happen in one day. One cycle can be in a day.
Right, because I had to wait
every day
till after I had, like I was okay, until after I had I was done with kids. Like my tubes were tied, I'm done.
Oh, and so you probably thought too, if I get surgery, that'll motivate me to stop.
Oh, totally.
Oh, that is, so you didn't know when you made that decision what that was doing to you psychologically.
Right.
You don't know.
I thought, okay, this will motivate me to lose, to, like, I can't exercise because my boobs are so big, and, like, if I get them cut off, then I can run, if I get the stomach cut off, I can actually exercise. Like, but, I mean,
you don't know. You don't know the downside until you're living in it.
Right, and he said, like, normally, like, they don't like to do surgery on someone that heavy. They want you to lose the weight first, but since, I think it'll motivate you, I'll agree to do it.
They're so, oh my God, he just wanted your money.
and
that's hilarious.
But I mean, it was huge in terms of, like, feeling better about myself.
Better, don't, it's not better about yourself. It's better about your body.
Okay,
I know. The reason why I correct that is so you can tell the difference, because you've clouded the difference between the two.
Yes, yeah, you're right. I mean, I do think that it's one and the same, but you're right.
They're not. Very different. That's like saying I feel better about myself when I drive this car.
Yeah.
Or it's not really feeling better about yourself. You're feeling better about the car in relation to something you get out of it narcissistically based on the way it looks or the way it's symbolized as a status symbol. So do you see how it kind of goes further and further out from there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even real. And this brings us back to that third hierarchy of need. The goal is that you get that sense of completion with something real and authentic from within. That it's not reliant on
That's what I've never, ever been able to do. Ever.
Well, of course. Otherwise you wouldn't be talking to me. Here we are.
Right. Like, I literally have always had to, and that's why I've never, ever been able to lose weight for myself. Like, I always need some external thing, like a guy or a vacation, or I need something to motivate me. And then when that's done, I got the guy, or
and then you get a little
over. I have to find something else, or then the motivation goes away.
Well, because your reality shows up around your animalness, right, or with food. So that's the problem with anorexia, is that it doesn't work in reality because your wiring is to prioritize food, and you can't unwire that. And so the only way to calm it is to stay in permanent isolation or to constantly do that stuff because you're dealing with evolution that is not going to go away.
Yeah.
That's an interesting, don't you agree, when you really look at this, it should help you not seem so weird. Like you can go, well, of course I'm this way. Of course I'm going to do all this stuff. Of course I'm going to do that. Like that it should make sense to you, your issues with food. That part shouldn't be like, we got to figure that out. No, we don't. That part to me is working as it's supposed to.
Right.
What we have to look at is clearly you are triggering this. And we both know it's only because you have to lose weight. You have to deprive, right? The trigger comes from these food restrictions that that are not permanent. They're only sustainable temporarily. So you have temporarily restriction, but the rest of your life is like a break from restriction. I just need a break, right?
Yeah.
So
I just like I don't know. I can't imagine just like being like, okay, whatever, and then I would get
I know it
feels
as
big as a house.
Right? It feels that's how I felt too. That's how everybody feels. You were so right on target. You got it. That's
like do that. Like I'll for sure need surgery because I won't be able to freaking move. Like
Yep, yeah. You're not the first client I've worked with who's gone through surgery and used the same idea around it too.
I mean, there was times when I was like, oh, maybe I should just gain 40 pounds, then I could have the surgery.
And then I could do it again. And then that'll motivate me. Just keep on being anorexic.
Surgery, that surgery.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? I love that you're seeing this clearly, but you're right. I can't imagine. I couldn't imagine either. In fact, it was so unimaginable that I would rather commit suicide. So I do understand when you say it's not, I can't even fathom it. I couldn't either. And neither can any of the clients I've worked with who have recovered, who've done it. There is no concept of how to do that. It doesn't come to you because it's life and death. It's like, but I have to have this, Robin. How am I going to get rid of this when I have to have it?
And it's also like, I think,
it's the center of my life. The center of my life. How do you get rid of that?
And as a nurse, like, then I have that other component of like, not even about looks. Like, well, if I'm just eating everything I want to eat and all this, food that's high in fat and stuff, then I'm going to have a heart attack and die. And, I'm going to have that. Like, I don't want to be unhealthy. Like, I mean, I probably am unhealthy.
Oh, I know. It's like you never question this whole I'm a nurse thing. You need to stop saying that. You need to get rid of that because it's not really, there's no credibility now. If you were to say, Robin, I'm an endocrinologist that focuses specifically on eating disorders, and I know all the high risks because it's got the highest morbidity rate of any mental illness. I would maybe listen to you for 2 seconds. Just so that you know. So you need to stop playing that. It's not serving you in this process. It's not serving you. The whole nurse card is not working.
No, I mean, but I...
It's not, you're giving it way too much credibility, and you're not up to date. You're not. And you're probably getting information from a pharmaceutical agent who's selling blood pressure medication. Put that down. There's a lot you don't know. There's a lot I don't know. So I'm not sitting here playing like I know more, but I do know very much more about this very specific situation. And I do want you to know it's common for people to think that. But in reality, you're extremely unhealthy in this sketchy survival mode around food. It is far more detrimental than body fat. Body fat is actually really healthy. It's just under what environment?
Yeah, I guess it's just
it's all relative.
Everything you listen to, and I have to listen to the doctors tell patients, you need to lose weight.
I know, and those doctors have no idea. I'm going to send you some pictures of the rates of stigma that occurs in an office and the actual correlation to eating disorders from a medical standpoint, how horrible it is and triggering it is for people to go to a doctor that tells them that. It's a massive problem. Yeah, like not only that, there's a lot of issues that he's causing to actually support the eating disorder behavior with that type of attitude. So you're not questioning that person's mental illness either. There's a ton. In fact, next time you go get some continuing education credits, you'll find there's support for this type of work. The stigma around the concept of obesity is actually promoting behavior and issues when you're stigmatizing someone as unhealthy. And there's a ton of research from social scientists around the actual boom in eating issues that correlated to the push to obesity epidemic. The concept of the obesity epidemic has actually been directly correlated to this massive degree of eating disorders that are occurring right now because of the stigma around you're diseased and filthy. You're a filthy pariah. Like it's a pariah.
Right.
Yeah, that's how you're treated.
So I
So
feel like I'm like...
So you live in that.
I get it from the medical side and I get it from the social side. So it's like I can't win either way.
You have to look at your own circumstance and look at it as like this is the consequence of these beliefs. This is what happens. And I am now, I don't want to call you a victim, but you're kind of a victim of that mentality.
Right.
Yeah, and you're not questioning that as the problem. Maybe it's that way of thinking that is why I have this life and death reaction to it when I go to the hospital. It's because I work with someone who's probably got pathological narcissism and he's constantly shaming his patients for having body fat, not realizing that that's the actual source of why they have eating issues. So he's just feeding the issues, the problem with his self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Or hers.
Yeah.
I have karma's a bitch for that doctor. I mean, it's going to suck, but I have a bunch of slides done from a continued education course on the stigma of obesity and the actual consequences that has in a medical environment.
And then it's almost worse because she has this kind of cultural thing. So the way she goes about saying it, it's not even nice.
No, she's really
because it's Chinese kind of
Oh
culture,
my God, I cannot wait to send you these pictures just for your own, there's stats. There's so much research done on this. Tons. Yeah, and you're oblivious to all of this. And you keep on but I'm a nurse. Now hold on a second. There is so much knowledge and current awareness around what's going on socially. To hold on to outdated bullshit is just not serving you. You're clearly suffering from these issues, and you might want to open yourself up to why you're suffering so much. You know what I mean? What if this is your belief patterns are a major cause of that survival reaction to your weight?
Oh, I'm sure it is. And I kind of was raised that you look up to doctors like you do your parents. So what they say,
there's the narcissism. there's the narcissism. That's what you're, yeah, like, and you'll notice you probably have worked with a bunch of pricks. I've worked with a ton of doctors. I'm not kidding. And they all talk about the pricks. That guy is such a fucking prick. I mean, he thinks his shit doesn't stink. He clearly has daddy issues and a tiny penis. You know, and there are a lot of people in that for their mental illness reasons. Their narcissism is how they got there and why they're in it. But so abusing your patient psychologically is cool because you earned it. You know what I'm saying? So
a lot of surgeons are like that.
Yep, and not all, but you know, when you are witnessing emotional and psychological abuse from a doctor to a patient, that's kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I am totally going to send you this stuff. I think it would be good for you to see, not just for yourself, but to see the statistics on how it impacts the eating issues of people who are receiving and hearing this on the other side, and how detrimental has been to the whole idea of the obesity epidemic. It's actually feeding the actual symptoms of it.
I know. I always want to I'm standing there, listening to her, and I almost, want to butt in and, save this person. Oh.
Well, I think it does. You can't be the rescuer, even though it's like you can sense that this doctor is so ignorant. I'm trying to find right now the sheets. I've got them organized in this research. This whole thing is just stacked full of research, and I have like a whole nother pile. And I have this because I'm going to reference this in my book, and I have to have it on file. But God damn it, it's in here, and it's freaking amazing. I mean, it's just slide after slide after slide. Oh, I found it. Holy crap. Of stigma. I mean, even if you could just go to Google and medical, you know how when you go to Google, they'll give you the option of research articles versus just like magazine articles.
Oh, uh-huh.
Just Google obesity and stigma in eating and it's like overwhelming. Okay, lower physical activity in adults experience more negative feelings towards exercise, so they're less likely to exercise. There's just when they're there's so much evidence. Weight-based teasing during physical activity. 85% of adolescents observe peers being teased during gym, and they're more likely to avoid physical activity because of that. Barriers to weight loss treatment. Adults with weight loss treatments who report weight stigma consume more calories and expend less energy through physical activity and are less likely to achieve what they're trying to do, especially if they have a practitioner that's judged their weight.
Right.
Yep, and they tend to, there's so many. Survey of 2,449 women, how do you cope with stigma experiences? 79% report eating right afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Food is the coping mechanism.
It's that passive-aggressive kind of, my mom used to, she wouldn't come out and say, you're fat, you need to, and I catch myself doing this with my younger son who's like me, and I feel so bad. But she used to, are you going to eat all that? Yeah, and 5 more fucking bowls,
Yeah, totally. So you have to keep that in mind when you go back to your whole food addiction model. So when I have literally 20 more of these. There's so much. Stigma and obesity, weight stigma. And so weight stigma is associated with an increase in likelihood of becoming and remaining obese, regardless of age, baseline BMI, any form of stigma in your brain. If you hold stigma against fat people, you're more likely to become obese and stay obese. Weight stigma and binge eating. Experience of weight stigma increases frequency of binge eating episodes. So when someone actually has experience of weight stigma in the medical environment, they are more likely to have more and more binge eating. Because of the pressure.
If you feel bad, someone, you already feel bad about yourself. You know, someone's
again, go into that
saying something.
Go into survival mode. Go into that survival mode of that third hierarchy need. I mean, avoidance of healthcare. When someone has been stigmatized, they get delayed preventative services. They don't go to the doctor. They get disparate. Women attributed their decisions to not get preventative services, which okay, as a nurse, now we're talking your language, how important that is.
Oh,
just getting your pap smears, getting your breasts checked, getting they're not even getting their blood pressure checked because of this type of stigma in the work environment. So women attributed their decision to not get medical care because of disrespect from providers, embarrassment because of their weight, negative provider attitudes, medical equipment too small, and they switched doctors due to perceived differential treatment because of their weight. I mean, less time.
See that. I would.
No shit. I mean, so just consider you work in an environment with a narcissist that is a thin supremacist, and she is abusive psychologically to people coming in to get help. Reasons.
Yeah, I would never go see.
I'm just saying. Weight bias among dietitians and dietetic students. Weight bias expressed as blaming patients for their excess weight. Anger and frustration with patients, assuming patients lack commitment, motivation, and compliance with health behaviors. 76% of all registered dietitians expressed moderate or high implicit weight bias. Levels of implicit weight bias among dietitians are higher than the general population. You think that might impact all the...
Well, because they're going to think they're better because
they probably have degrees of anorexia. And I actually have that as well. I have that statistic of how many dietitians have had anorexia, bulimia, and are still functioning in it. Physicians view patients with obesity as less disciplined, less compliant, more annoying. As patient BMI increases, physicians report having less patience, less desire to help the patient, seeing these patients as a waste of their time, having less respect for their patients. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, the doctor that I used to work for, like, one-on-one, I mean, I was his direct nurse. I blatantly saw, like, he would treat someone completely different on the way. Like, if it was a young, pretty, thin girl, the consultation went completely different than if they were a heavy, and then I used to think, well, God, what does he think of me? Like, I mean, it was just, he eventually got fired. It was so bad. I used to have to sit in the consultations with him to make sure he didn't, like, once he started getting in trouble and the doctors required me to be in there with him to make sure, like, see what he was saying,
Mm-hmm.
It was, that's, like, so damaging.
Yeah,
so,
here's one. I'll do this last one here. This is sources of perceived weight stigma among women. So they rated the percentages of, like, where is the most you experience this. Number 1 is family. Number 2 is their doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
then it goes down, and it goes to, like, school classmates is next, friends, coworkers, mother, spouse, servers at restaurants, and then nurses. So you're right there in the upper middle. Yeah, you have to really think about how your issues with your own weight are projected onto other people in your work environment. Members of the community, dietitian and nutritionists, it actually occurs less than nurses. Yeah, just so that you know. What weight bias and the stigma around the, you're a terrible human being. That's why you're fat and you don't deserve to get medical treatment because you might as well just die of your heart attacks. Can you imagine how that is actually affecting your eating disorder?
Yeah. I mean.
Just saying. There's so much science around this. So much, and how it impacts the patient, their food behavior. Does it actually help? Especially when they don't understand the issue,
Yeah.
It's amazing. I wish I could, if I had this on email, I wish I could, I don't have it in email version. I could just take pictures and send you some of these so that you can see them, because this is really important for you to understand how not only has this impacted you, but how it's impacting the people that come to your clinic. Because it's directly impacting you and your eating disorder. And the survival mechanisms that are underlying this impulsiveness to restrict and fear of gaining weight, especially at work. Why you would have such a severe emotional and psychological reaction to it. It would make sense with this type of stigma and fear of rejection, abandonment, and being, seen as a lesser human being by the doctor you're working for. That would make sense to me.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't want to be a hypocrite, you feel like if you're a doctor or nurse, you need to be this picture of health because, because
you're superior.
Oh, can be a doctor. Like,
oh my God.
Because
you're human, and this idea of doctors being superior people is just a bunch of it's a crock of shit.
Right. They have, that's why no wonder they have God complex.
I was going to say it's attractive to people with this pathological narcissism. They like to feel superior and control people. Not everybody. Again, I've worked with so many doctors, and I have more cases don't experience that, but I have experienced that one person that literally you have to bend over and get it up your ass and then give them a blowjob. Then you can talk to them.
Yeah, well, most of the doctors I work with are they're amazing.
Right, I know, that's what I meant, most, but there are those ones that basically ruin it for everybody, because that's the person you're scared of.
Right, and I love this doctor, I love him to death, but he's so funny. It's like, well, you just need to eat celery for breakfast, that's what I do. He's like, I was trying to get back to my college weight, and I just eat celery for breakfast.
I know, what's amazing is no one's questioning the eating disorders. You realize that eating disorders have the highest morbidity rate of any mental illness. Like, you're more likely to die doing what you're doing.
Really?
Yes. I mean, seriously, you're super undereducated when it comes to this stuff. Which is why you keep on going back to, but I'm so a nurse. Oh my God, you're so undereducated when it comes to this.
Yeah. No,
and the thing is that you're living proof of how terrible it is for your health. You're living proof because of how impulsive you are with food. And there's the more you weight bias you are, the more intense you are with restricting, the more intense you are with your impulsivity to eat. It's like you're you're a living example. You're living in how fucked up that viewpoint is.
Mm-hmm. No, I know. I'm like the poster child.
Of how messed up this way of thinking is and how catastrophic and detrimental it can be, not just to your psyche, but your physical health too. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, there's so much. I mean, there's so much.
So I'll read all of it. I can look up.
I'll take pictures of what I have, but these are all studies done. I mean, there's tons and tons of this done because of how everything's been treated and this huge influx of psychological problems with it that they're seeing are driving what's going on underneath it all. And this whole concept of obesity, even calling it an obesity epidemic, is driving it.
I can see that because I guarantee you, if I went to the doctor and they were condescending to me and basically made me feel like I was a piece of shit because I was overweight, I would hit the closest McDonald's nearby.
Good job. Well, you do that to yourself enough, so you are that douchebag to yourself. Even worse. I mean,
right.
So just the validation of someone else treating you that way, it's like, why question how demented this is when the dementedness is common? Like, I deserve, and you really have to go into the core of that and ask, do you really deserve to feel ashamed about something so dumb? It's so messed up because it's not like you're hiding and you're treating yourself as if you're getting off on dissecting live animals for fun. You know what I mean? I could see if you'd want to hide and like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I'm a dangerous human. That would make more sense.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta go, my dear. It's been a